Welcome to Mindful School Marketing, your go-to podcast for personal and professional growth.
We're school marketers, business owners, and moms passionate about connecting other school professionals with tools and strategies for success.
We love solving problems, exploring new ideas, and thinking outside the box. Let's transform your school and life starting right now. Transform your school's admissions and marketing with Inquiry Tracker, the ultimate solution for managing inquiries seamlessly. Discover how you can make your admissions process more efficient and effective with this leading solution. Welcome to Mindful School Marketing. I'm Aubrey Bursch.
And I'm Tara Clays. Today we're joined by Jesse Meadow. Jesse is a co-founder and managing director of Schoolcraft Digital. He's a proud girl dad and lucky husband. Schoolcraft Digital works with independent schools across the country in planning, strategizing, and implementing holistic marketing strategies that resonate with the parents of today. Welcome, Jesse. We're really looking forward to this conversation today.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I'm glad to be on for, I guess, round 2 now. This is second time on. So I really appreciate it. Totally different topic this time.
It is, but it's going to be a good one. I mean, we're really excited to have you back on the show. I will tell you that I know I've been personally so excited to record this episode. I reached out to you because I was like, after reading your blogs, which are fabulous for those who haven't, read them. I really wanted to talk about this topic that you wrote about. And but before we dive in, I want to set the stage for our listeners. Like, this conversation is actually based on Jesse's blog posts that were based on this concept. It's the fourth turning. It's been a book. It's been a lot of different things. And it's a big concept, and it might look like it's outside the traditional bounds of school marketing. However, it really is kind of a lens for understanding generational cycles, leadership, and change in education. And that's kind of what Jesse's blogs hinted at. So, Jesse, for listeners who might not be familiar with this concept and this topic, can you start by explaining what the four turnings are and where we are in that cycle right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So essentially, the fourth turnings are kind of a historical view of kind of cycles of history. And specifically with this book, it's focusing on, the Anglo-American. So, a little bit pre-America from English and then over into the American cycles. And it really focuses on, an 80 to roughly 100-year time periods that are defined by commonalities, and they seem to repeat themselves. And mainly because, as the theory holds, it's because of the generational archetypes that are built inside of those. Meaning, your life experiences make you this type of thinker. And so when you get into parts of power, you implement that sort of perception of life. And then that has repercussions for the younger generation and so on and so forth. And it just kind of keeps cycling through. So that would be, the very broad level understanding of it. I would say, where we are right now is the crisis area. And that's, we're getting a little bit what they're calling the millennial crisis era. And we're kind of in the middle towards the end of what that's going to look like. So, that's kind of where we are today. But, it has really humbled me and calmed me down, oddly enough, with kind of where we are today, what we're seeing today, and making sense of all of it. Like, how did we get here? And, my parents have been saying that for maybe my whole life. It's not like back in the day, or not like when I was a kid, or this, and this. So, a lot of those generational things were big questions for me. And this book kind of framing it as different generations that make their impact at different times in their life, creates those different turnings.
So interesting. On a personal level, we all want to think about this and identify this concept, but what drew you to applying this fourth turning thinking to independent schools in the first place?
Yeah. So that's a very long process that wasn't very direct. It's become a little bit more trained as I've gotten older, but I do tend to look for answers in books. Not everyone does that, but if I'm trying to solve a problem, usually there's a book written about it that at least sparks my mind to start manifesting whatever that solution may be, or understanding. It originally started with the first book called The Fourth Turning. And, that was a lot more on the generational side of things and how that kind of shaped those turnings. And oddly enough, the universe works in odd ways. I ended up getting this book and finishing it about 3 to 4 weeks before they released the second one. And mind you, this was, decades apart. So it was very weird timing. I took it as such, and I dove right in as if the universe was telling me, you need to learn more. But as anything, and again, where I was talking about a little bit more of a training, like, okay, I learned this. It's helpful for me. I have a much better understanding about these things. I'm looking at the future in different ways and applying my perceptions of it. What does this mean for, how does this help? And, my line of work, obviously, I wanted to apply it with the folks that I'm involved with most every day with, clients, different blogs, different things, our little audience community. So this is kind of where I was like, I know it doesn't talk about schools specifically, but institutions are a big, big piece of either the highs or the lows inside of this. And normally they talk a little bit more on like a government level, but this could be also a church. But schools are institutions. And then you get the thinking in my head, okay, well, my alma mater was founded in 1912. There's lots and lots of schools with hundreds of years of history. How did they get through it? Because clearly they did go through this cycle already. So, what were some things? And then that began the rabbit hole of where we've come with the blog series. So, a little bit more of the personal selfish interest that turned into, okay, how can I use this in some productive way? And question after question about, oh, well, this could relate to schools in a lot of different ways, because it really is more of a sentiment of the environment around you or the population, which in turn is marketing. How are you going to market to these folks? This is who we're talking to. So what is driving that kind of decision making? And then from there, it kind of took off into some interesting rabbit holes.
It's fascinating. I really enjoyed those blogs. And I mean, we mentioned kind of the cycles, which are the four turnings. So like there's that high, which is like that post-crisis era, the awakening, the unraveling, where trust in institution fades. And then we're in this period of crisis, right? Which started around 2007, 2008, right? And it's considered like, obviously a really volatile phase. So, as we're looking and applying it to schools, and as you wrote so eloquently in your blog, what can schools expect in this era of crisis, especially in the next 12 to 24 months? Like, let's look at the cycles. Let's take what we learned from them and then apply it to schools. So can you kind of talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely say, unfortunately, schools need to plan for this uncertainty and volatility to be normal. Waiting for the normal to come back is not really the recipe for this era. That's hopeful thinking. We could all have that kind of approach, but at the same time, there needs to be plans and actions taken during this time period that are built, because it's going to be volatile, because you're not going to know which leg is going to drop next and what to expect here. So, and there's some things you can do a lot on perfectly timed. It's mostly a lot of mindful things that you could be doing here to kind of weather this storm. So, I would say depending, it's going to be very region dependent. So, some areas will see no problems at all. Well, let me rephrase that. No problems with enrollment at all. There'll definitely be the politicization and the polarization still happening everywhere. Financial stressors are going to be happening everywhere, no matter where the school may be. But other schools may have migration issues, either plus or minus. So there's going to be, different things happening in different regions. I would say it'd be more regional. But generally speaking, preparing for this cycle to be longer than a few years, it's not going to get better yet. And you need to have kind of a plan in place to address that unease, uncertainty, so that you can become, and kind of what my blog talks a lot about with clarity and being mission focused, is you're kind of the calm in the storm. You're the one that is becoming, hey, this is who we are. This is what we're doing. This is what we provide. This is the outcomes. You're that safe haven. And you can see that already starting to come, even in the places that are having booming enrollment right now. You can still see that transition and messaging happening. So I would say, at the top level, It depends on your region, but definitely plan for a lot more ease, and it's not going to go away. So don't plan for normal. That's behind us now. Gosh, that sounds so pessimistic when I say it out loud like that, but I'm very hopeful about everything.
Thank you for the hope. I've heard hope and determination are a good combination right now. So, looking at economic signals like birth rates, consumer debt, inflation, job volatility, those types of things. If a head of school could only track 3 monthly indicators, like in a one-page dashboard, 3 things, what would you pick and why?
For sure, I would say your local economic indicators. County unemployment rates would be good, especially because county is broader than a city, which is usually, your driving distance is usually not just, just the city. It might be out into the outskirts. So, like, what is your local environment unemployment rate? Because that's going to be a huge driver on ability to pay. So, I would say that general on a national scale, if you can get localized, great. But typically, the CPI, so the Consumer Price Index. So, are folks still spending money? I mean, we're a complete society built off of frivolous spending. If that stops, the trickle down from that is going to be all over the place. So, I would definitely focus on, what is the unemployment rate in my particular region or county, and then generally speaking, are consumers still spending? Is there a tightening of the purse, or is it still everyone's talking about tightening the purse, but we're still seeing indicators that everyone's spending on Amazon, and on all of these big ticket items? Because at the end of the day, private school it's a luxury item. It's a choice that families need to make, and we can debate all day on the importance of that choice, but it is, I'm sure many of your listeners have seen quite a few families pull back because of money issues while still having the 3 cars and the mansion. And you just, smack your head on where are your priorities here. So generally speaking, just making sure that folks are still spending is a great indicator. And then, to be honest with you, I would say the other piece that I would throw onto that, it's not exactly an economic metric, but tracking your inquiries to tourist applications. That's going to be key, because this will be the big differentiator on if your messaging is working well. So, for example, if your unemployment rate is going down, or is not where it used to be, or not going great, CPI, consumers are showing a tightening of the purse, but your inquiries are still getting, populated and going into tours. And then when they actually get on campus, they speak, they see, they feel what's happening in that environment and what you guys are doing. They're leading to applications. That is an offset of what the economics is happening around you. You are clearly communicating to the population around you and to the parents around you, and they're giving you that trust and making hard decisions to still go in that direction. And if it's not, and you're kind of in line with everything else, okay, that's where it's come back to the table. What do we need to switch here? So without knowing that, you're not going to really have good data on whether to pivot or not. So I would say, that countywide or the most regional you can get unemployment rate, consumer price index, and then increase the tourist applications. If all of those things are tracked, you should have a pretty good picture on kind of how to navigate the day-to-day, at least.
That's fascinating. I'm so glad you brought up data, because a lot of times when I'm working with schools, there's a lot of I feel this, or we've heard this, but like having potential data to track can really help start those conversations and steer them in a productive way where you're taking action and looking and seeing what's working and what's not. I'm curious, so, now we have some ideas. So let's say you have these ideas, you were tracking things. What do we do if we're looking ahead? Like, what are the things during this crisis era that schools can kind of implement? And you talk about them in your blog, the 5 principles, anchors, that would help a school kind of be able to weather this crisis era and to still be here after it, right? So you had mission over marketing, community over competition, clarity over complexity, data over drama. And I'm assuming data over drama is similar to what we just discussed, but adaptation over assumptions. So I'm curious if you kind of reflect on those and talk about like where are schools underestimating the most and what is the first step for them to take in kind of both understanding these things and implementing them. And if you have examples, please let us know.
Sure. I would say the clarity over complexity, I think, is probably the most underestimated. And I also think in practicing boiling things down, you will get to adaptations over assumptions, mission over marketing. So, and what that really means is, I'll give you a good example. My alma mater has amazing programs. I mean, when I went to school there, it was quite a traditional boarding school. It grew while I was there. Now my diploma from there looks amazing, and keep on keeping on. But they have so much to offer. And I mean, and many schools have this. They have, this unique athletic program where they have this arts program, and they may have, a choir or theater or orchestra inside of that arts program. And, then they have soccer or basketball and, tennis, swimming, all of hockey for folks that I'm from Florida, so we don't have too much hockey down here. But, all of those things can be standalone pushes. They're amazing. They have great results, but it's very complex. You're throwing too much at the parents of today. So clarifying what that is really the best way to move forward with that. And what we do, and that's really helped a lot in this process when we kind of build strategies and the messaging for our campaigns with our clients, but it would apply anywhere, is, we really try to reach for a mission appropriate theme or tagline. And this would be something that hopefully would be multi-year, but at least a full year, where you kind of throw everything under this bucket, but it's still a clear, singular message. We have a school client in Hawaii, uniquely, it's a place to learn like nowhere else. This is, everything can fall under this type of mission. My alma mater, it's who we are. So yeah, they have 20 different things to promote, and then, 100 different things in each one of those to talk about. But it all gets clarity. And where that really comes into play, which I think is a very misunderstood part of this process, is we like to think about the clarity over complexity with external, which is absolutely the case. We are talking externally to prospective families. But more importantly, and this, kind of goes on to the calming in leadership roles, is the clarity is really good for internal as well. Everyone's going to have opinions about whatever's happening different times. Redirecting the staff, the teachers, everyone on campus, that this is the mission, this is what we're doing, this is the core driver, this is who we are, this is a place to learn like nowhere else. Those types of easy to understand kind of themes and taglines can be the lens and the filter in which everyone talks and thinks. So when you have a tour, everyone knows the entire campus is the admissions department. Every person and interaction that they meet with, especially if you're doing like school visit days where they're going to be going into classes, do you have that alignment, within your internal community, much less what you're promoting externally? So I would say that clarity piece would really, starting that process would really kind of boil things down, and then it gets you to focus on who you are, what you do, and what part of that is going to resonate with the personalities and the parents of today. No, it's kind of a rambling with that.
It's a lot. No, it's okay. It's a lot. It's a lot to take in. Let's talk about the COVID boom. So why some schools surged while others stalled. You referenced this earlier, right? So largely due to migration patterns or public school policies. What did the fast growers actually do different during that time that is repeatable now?
I would say, migration patterns absolutely were drivers of either loss. If you saw losses mostly in urban areas, like downtown schools, things, a lot of people moved away into the suburbs, where you saw booms in rural areas. because they could with remote work. And that still kind of holds a little bit true today because remote work is still here, not as much, but it's still here. I think tactically and strategically, the ones that had influxes, miscommunication with the public school systems around them really implemented strategies that could be still used today. And that was along this same message of the clarity. They had a plan, they spoke to that plan, they were open, they spoke to the, and that's not always the public schools' faults. They have to have regulations from legislation on whether to be open or closed. But having that sort of back and forth, they weren't ready to not be open in a lot of places. There were literal pockets of generations of kids or years of kids where they were just lost because they weren't learning. They didn't have all the digital infrastructure to be able to have those lessons at home. So the schools that saw that coming either already had iPads for everyone or some sort of digital curriculum going on. All they needed to do was kind of ramp that up. They talked about that messaging when they did come back to campus, if they were able to. We spoke a lot about what were the morning routines with the custodian staff, how they Lysoled everything, how, mask wearing, and, whether you, like, it wasn't so much if you agreed or not, it was more of you were communicating the safety measures that were being taken so that we could get back to as much of normal as possible. That really hit home for a lot of folks, especially near those places where, the public schools weren't open, or when they were, it was a lot of disarray, and, they felt that their kids were getting lost. And, this kind of talks to it a little bit, but the generation of parents today, they have a lot on their plate. I'm not going to get on a soapbox about how my life is so tough compared to my parents, but my life is so tough compared to I'll just there's a lot to deal with. We've grown up in a crisis. We've gone from one crisis to another. And I only say that is because I know my parents' involvement with school when I was a kid compared to what I would like to be involved with my daughters in their school. If not, I just don't have that possibility. I don't have that time. I have to focus on, work or, and I'm in a great situation. I'm very much blessed. Your average folk, it's going to be very difficult for them to be as involved with the school as they used to be because there's so many other things that are necessitating their bandwidth and their attention. So everything has to kind of be, boxed into little corners. Knowing that your child or children are in a place that is taking care of it is such a sense of security that I think if you message that well, it resonated well. I still think that would apply today. I don't think any of those, we might be in fear. We might not be in fear of a virus so much, but we are still in fear of uncertainty, down here in Florida, literally what you're learning in class with the book. So, making sure that you are messaging your position in a, neutral way, but just so that the parents have that sense of security and they can feel that trust. It's really all about that trust in the relationship. If they can trust that you are there and you're marketing yourselves and you're putting your external communications in a way that is building that trust, you will do well. And I think you saw that a lot with the public versus private or charter during the COVID time.
That's so interesting. I just gave a presentation in Chicago not too long ago, and we were talking about communication and how important it is. And like that parents are overwhelmed right now. They're so overwhelmed. So how are we reassuring them, both like the parents that are already at your school and the ones considering your school, that their children are going to be okay? Like the values alignment, everything, they're going to be okay and they're in good hands, right?
That's right.
So I think that's super important. I really appreciate what you said about that. I definitely want to talk to you about affordability because this is a hot topic all around. That's just like, we all, if we think back to 2008, I remember working in a school and dealing with that, right? That was a tough one. If we think back to even during COVID times when, there was a lot of uncertainty and everything like that, affordability is important. And it sounds like during this crisis era, it's something that we kind of need to consider. As you mentioned in your blog here, you talked about, building financial flexibility. So could you talk a little bit about like what schools might want to consider, whether it's index sliding scale tuition, like what should they be looking at, like, or what should they be embracing? What should they be like, stepping away from, and what should they be considering today? And how can they message these things without kind of undermining like their value of who they are?
Yeah, I mean, that's a very, I wish I had the silver bullet for that, but it does vary, and it's always going to be, there's so many variables involved in whether that's which path to take. It's difficult to have an overarching answer for that. I would say, as generally as possible, each school would definitely have to look at the variables taken in. Some schools are not having, an enrollment problem or an attrition problem or, some of those things. So, a sliding scale wouldn't make sense for a school like this. Where in other areas, it may make perfect sense because, listen, we have to meet our population in some way. No fault of their own. It's where they live. It's migration patterns. There's again so many different factors driving a lot of those variables. You're going to have to kind of look at it on a case by case basis. I would say messaging anything. I believe firmly. I've always believed this. And I think it's more relative today than ever. Get away from, affordability is not that bad, but there's better ways to state it. Being accessible. Accessibility is a great term to use in place of that. But the other part that I would focus on too is, and this kind of goes along with the clarity, and it would help message that in totality, is mission fit, mission appropriate students. Accessibility for right fit students. Not just financial aid for the sake of financial aid. So again, in some schools, it might make sense to have a financial aid budget of X, and it's going to go to whatever need-based you have. If you don't have enrollment problems, perfect. If you do have enrollment issues, that might not be the right model because you might be turning people away, where you could adapt your financial aid structure to be able to meet some of those families. I think to waive or to weather some of these, especially when you're trying to build that community feel, I've really liked having a kind of retention first financial aid approach. So it's not just a chunk and then it kind of goes out to everyone. It's, however you want to set that up. But, I've seen it done where, the current students have first crack, essentially. They're going to be the ones you want to retain those students more than you want to get new students with financial aid. So, having a very retention focused financial aid system, I think no matter what the situation may be, is only going to further build that trust, the community, the relationships. And everyone knows, like I'm in digital marketing. I'm all about outreach, brand awareness, getting out there in new ways, finding new families, but word of mouth is not going to go anywhere. This is a very emotional driven decision. They're going to talk with friends. They're going to talk to other people in their community. So making sure that, you're doing what you can to make your institution have that good light. These are those little things that you could be doing across all stages. I think a retention focused financial aid and kind of changing things to, right fit student accessibility and kind of focusing more on this could lead to whatever your goal may be, whether it's just to diversify your economic population in your school. There's a lot of different reasons that schools will kind of look to implement something. I would stay away from discounts or anything that kind of feels that way, especially because emotions are high right now and not too rational. So you want to minimize the perception a family may have on why this kid got money or family got money, I didn't get money, and this got. Now we've started, drama, and again, go back to the data, not the drama, and kind of focus on that. I think that if you were to kind of focus it more on right fit accessibility, you kind of eliminate a lot of that talk, and you have something to come back on as sort of proof of your intentions.
This is really interesting. I'm so glad you talked about this. I'm curious, and it's more of kind of a reflection of what I'm in the Metro DC area. So a lot of the schools that we work with here are, and I would say nationwide, also other schools I'm working with, it's like parents are having trouble with job security right now, current families of the school. So your retention first aspect, and I'm assuming that would apply to that. Like, how do we keep the families that we love, like, and we want, if they're like having trouble searching for a job? Like, can we help them stay here while they get their footing? Because that like lasting connection and lasting support and building of community actually will serve us in the long run, not only because we want these families here, obviously, but I'm curious, like, is that the kind of the lens you were going through with like the retention first piece?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, in your area, oh my gosh, I couldn't imagine. I mean, we have a school in your area and they deal with this. It's, if you've got government employees right now,
It's hard.
week to week, all right, let me
Not even
rephrase.
just government
Week-
now. It's
uh,
everyone. Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
the whole area.
Amazon,
Yeah.
Everyone.
It's just
Everyone's getting
AI coming in.
Yeah.
You know, some positions are more vulnerable than others, but you know, every industry may have a different focus on a different aspect of their tech stack, and then you know, it might be replacing here, or even if it's not replacing, downgrading. As long as there's money income lost, or the ability to afford lost, you're going to run into that issue. And absolutely, that's exactly what it is. I wouldn't say that, you know, it should be something that is, you know, third grader, and then you continue year to year for the next decade. But there are, to say that there's not moments or years where you could be implementing. Listen, when I worked at a school, we were big on school culture. It was huge. It's imperative. How the kids are interacting with each other, how the relationships are built with the teachers, so that they can have that cohesive, you know, classroom structure, coaches, teams. I mean, it gets into having the right fit students, gets into every aspect of what you do. And then when they graduate, the alumni that they become, the appreciation that they have, and the view of independent schools keeps things rolling. I mean, I know that's a very long way of thinking about it, but you know, this is the type of thing that, it's the little things you do now on more of a consistent basis with clarity that is going to build longer term the infrastructure and the give back structure that will keep you kind of aligned and moving forward into the future. At least that's what I've seen in what I believe on that.
Yeah, I know we're going on, so I'm going to try to wrap this up, but I'm going to come back to the idea of hope that you mentioned, because I think that's a word that's used a lot, and it's hard. It's a hard word to actually, I think, implement on a pretty consistent basis right now for many people, as for the reasons that we've talked about here. And you know, this whole fourth turning, bringing it back to that concept, that philosophy. Can you talk to us a little bit and wrap up with an idea of why this has given you hope, and also tying in our mindfulness from that we like to talk about, you know, how mindfulness applies to the idea of hope and sort of these different generations and eras that occur in our society.
No, it's very difficult. I would say for me, where I found hope is, one, uncertainty and unknowns can create a lot of havoc, especially if you're an internal thinker. I'm an internal thinker. I think while I'm talking, while I'm listening, while I'm reading, I'm always in thought. And that is a nightmare if you don't really know and you just have to go through all of the scenarios to try to get to some sort of understanding. So to come to a historical view of seeing examples of how we've been here before, you know, how the 20s and 30s were, you know, technically or technology wise not the same, but feeling, sentiment, unraveling of institutional trust, polarization, you know, all of these things that are just like, how could this be happening? What are we going to do? Where are we going to be? These things have happened, and the book talks about it on the Anglo-American side, you know, 5 times already. So you can point back to these eras and see that they lived through moments like this as well. So that kind of clarity, and it gave me some calm. On the generational piece, what kind of gave me a little bit of a like umph and some confidence is, my generation being, the millennial generation, elder millennial, Gen X a little bit too. We're the crisis generation. You know, I was what, 14, 15, 9/11 happened, one after another, after another, after another. And here we are continuing. Now it's even quicker. Like things are happening a lot sooner. My entire life has been managing and trying to figure out how to live in crisis mode. And where was frustrating when you look at this in the lens of, our topic here, we're the GI generation. So we're the hero generation, if you will. So these were the World War II GI soldiers. Like they were called upon to do the grunt, to take on the load, essentially. We're the donkey bringing everything. And through that, you can understand, hey, I have, and maybe this goes to more the spiritual thing, but it kind of gave me a sense of purpose in that, yes, this is tough. Yes, I am not growing up or experiencing my young children and their time and my time the same way when I was their age with my parents and everything. That was you could have two cars and this and everything was kind of there for you. It's tough now. There's much more limited. And, where that used to be a frustration, I start to wear a little bit more of a badge, a little bit more of an identity, like, hey, this is my role in moving my kids, us generally. I just have to do my part. And I'm technically built for this because I don't know anything else. And that's kind of what it goes on, the topics of the generations and how they influence different turnings is this is their experience. They don't know any different. So that kind of helped me give some calm and some hope, especially when you know that these cycles turn. There will be a turn. There will be a high. The inevitability of these things kind of makes it a little bit more calming. And I would say for the schools themselves, I thought about this a little bit, and I don't want to get religious, but if a school leader would think a little bit like a pastor or like a mass, I was Catholic, when you go there, they talk about topics that are happening now. Obviously, you want to relate to what's happening now, but it comes to revert back to what the scripture says. In this case, who we are as an institution and how we are going to be able to navigate that. Those can be calming messages. Again, you don't need to be religious about it. You can be, but essentially your staff are going to be just as influenced of what is happening around you as the students are going to be. And nowadays with the digital, the students are involved in way more politics than my generation was at their age. So they're bringing that into the classroom, and then the teachers have to manage it with their own, personal opinions about what's going on. So there's a lot of levels of uncertainty, emotions going on. So having those moments where you can kind of bring everyone together, talk about what's happening, and then give that leadership calm, like, hey, we've been here before. This will turn out. I can't speak to outside these walls, but inside these walls, we know X, Y, Z, and refocus. And I would say, it's definitely something that should not be random. Having a cadence to it will add to the calming effect. So whether it's weekly, whether it's monthly, whether it's whatever it may be, it could be just the administration, the admin team or the executive team. It could be a school-wide thing. Whatever that approach is for you, having those sort of kind of updates, what we like to say is that, pause, plan, and execute. So it's pause, hold on, look at the data, and then make the plan to kind of execute it. Have those moments on a regular cadence. It's expected. We know we're going to talk about it. You don't have to get all hyped up on Tuesday because, hey, I know on Friday we're going to bring this up. I'm going to write it down and we're going to talk there. So it kind of keeps the emotions on more of a consistent level. And then again, bringing it always back to the focus of whatever that clear message is and how you as an institution are going to implement that, I think would be a very hopeful and calming way to at least go about your day, or week inside of the school. And like we talked about earlier, that extrapolates into every tour that comes on campus, every marketing piece that goes out. Like if your internal community is on that same page, it's only going to showcase on the external side of things, which will help the cycle keep going.
Thank you. That made me feel more hopeful. We all need that. Oh, I mean, this conversation has been awesome. Now, Jesse, you did this before and you may not remember, but we do have a rapid fire section. So are you ready? And we're going to just rapid fire this super fast. So first thing off the top of your head, are we ready to rock and roll rapid fire?
Let's do it. Let's do it.
All right, let's rapid fire. Okay, if you could put one book in as mandatory reading in the high school curriculum, what would it be?
I have to say The Secret. It's done a lot for me lately. And all of the books that I've read since, in some way, shape, or form, correlate to that manifestation message and clear thought. I try to teach to my kids. I wish I was taught at a younger age that I can try this out, play with it, and start that belief. I would probably say The Secret.
Awesome. Thanks.
All right. That's by Rhonda Byrne.
Yes. Sorry.
All right. No, that's okay. Just make
I'm actually
sure you get it
terrible. I'm
right.
like the worst reader. I know the books and I know what I take from them, but I could run into the author and talk to them about the whole thing and not even know that that's who it was.
We have our Goodreads list, so we try to make sure we put links to
Yeah.
them in our
Oh, perfect.
Goodreads list. All right. So the next rapid fire question is, what is one app you could not live without?
And outside of work apps, man, I hate to sound like a new generation, but my GPT app has been such a savior in so many ways.
Is that
professionally and personally.
ChatGPT?
Yeah.
ChatGPT?
I got a ChatGPT app. I've got, the little voice activation. So if I'm on a drive or a long thing, and I mean, I can't tell you how many times where I'm just paralyzed by all of the things that I need to get done or need to do or what I'm thinking. Again, I never stop thinking. Brain dump it and say, hey, I'm going to brain dump. When I'm done, I'm going to say, this is the end. Then you respond. I brain dump the whole thing. And then from there, the next 15 minutes, we're organizing a whole action plan. And that's just, one little area. But without that, I don't know. I use that probably the most often outside of Slack and Monday, if you will.
Yeah. Spoiler alert, Jesse and I totally geeked out on ChatGPT and another conversation. And he's going to be speaking at the Small School Leaders Conference too. So excited about more AI to come from Jesse. Jesse, what are you reading right now?
I guess this is a little personally telling, but I am just finishing up The Imposter Cure, dealing with, everyone has the imposter syndrome sometimes, some more than others. So my perfectionist modes, this is helping me kind of get through on a personal level. But I have on deck Unreasonable Hospitality right there. So I'm super excited to kind of jump in that because that's really going to kind of bring it back to actionable things that we can take into our work life and help folks with. So I'm excited for that one coming up.
Yeah, I just finished that one. That was good. I'm not a foodie at all, so I couldn't relate to all the food things, but it was an incredibly interesting read. So yeah, thanks for sharing, Jesse. Where can people find you and learn more about what you do and where can they find these blogs that we keep referencing?
Yes, absolutely. If you go to schoolcraftdigital.com, you can find all the information about us, what we do, how we help our school partners across the country. There is a little resources on the header there that you can literally drop down into blogs. All of our blogs are there where you can kind of read up on these things. There's actually 3 in this series that we wrapped up, but there's some good resources there for you as well. If you wanted to link up, obviously we have scheduled consultation buttons everywhere. Even if we're not talking about, if we just want to talk about the book and what you heard here, let's do it. So, schedule an appointment. We could talk about how it's really affecting you and maybe some strategies to go on.
That'd be fantastic. Maybe you should start a book club, Jesse. Just saying, you get everyone involved, and we can all talk about this. One more thing to add. Sure, ChatGPT can handle it, I'm sure.
Yeah, exactly. Gosh, I gotta get my clone avatar. So
I know.
Fucking different angles.
I know. Well, when you figure that out, let me know.
Absolutely, I will.
This has been awesome. Thanks so much, Jesse, for being here. We really appreciate it. We love this conversation and just so grateful that you're in our colleague sphere and that you've shared this information with our amazing school leaders out there who are definitely going through it right now. So thank you.
No doubt. I really appreciate you having me on. Thank you so much. Always a pleasure talking with you.
Thanks a
Thank
lot,
you.
Jesse. Take care. Bye.
Thank you.
This episode is brought to you by Enquiry Tracker. We believe that every inquiry is an opportunity, and with Enquiry Tracker, you can unlock the full potential of your school's enrollment journey.
Say goodbye to missed opportunities and hello to a streamlined admissions process that prioritizes efficiency and effectiveness. Discover the leading solution for school admissions and marketing. Visit inquirytracker.net to book a personalized demo today. That's inquiry with an E, tracker.net.
Thanks for joining us on the Mindful School Marketing Podcast.
We'd love it if you pop into iTunes and leave a review, 5-star preferred. Let us know how you like the show. It helps us improve what we're doing and helps others find us too.